Hello everyone, I'm the Black Shadow, and we're back to another episode for Top 5, the series where we take a specific topic for the world of Dune Imperium, and I give my tips and tricks to help to improve your game. We're continuing our look through the various leaders for Bloodlines, introduced to join up with Dune Imperium Uprising, and next up for us to look at is going to be Steersman Y'Rkoon, a leader that when we first saw revealed has definitely one of the busiest leader cards going, and definitely there is a lot happening over here. Steersman very much worthy of having the 3 pips of complexity, but it's quite a fun leader actually, and definitely can be really powerful as well. So a lot of cool stuff going on here. So Steersman is a rather faction-heavy style leader that isn't a million miles away from Tessia Vernius, for those of you that have played Dune Imperium with Rise of Ix. Steersman, what he does is he creates like a navigation course. He plots a course throughout the game of various benefits that he wants to acquire, and then as you visit factions and you build friendship with them, you're able to trigger off these various abilities. Some of them are pretty darn powerful, and then you're looking to basically use those to give you big bursts of energy throughout the game in order to go ahead and score a ton of points. It does mean that steers can be really strong, and if you can get the triggers off when you want them, how you want them, you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. But it does mean that if you're not careful, you can set yourself up a bit awkwardly, and if the board kind of goes a bit weird, people kind of end up getting away, triggers can get very dicey as well. So something you've got to be a little bit careful of here. Steers, also the way he works, does have a few kind of rule funkalities as well. Funkalities? Is that a word? It is now. So you do have to be a little bit careful with Steersman and how you go ahead and trigger your abilities. But overall, I think he's a pretty fun leader and can definitely be super duper strong. So let's get into Steersman's abilities, and there is only one place to really begin, and that is going to be with his navigation deck with Plot Course. So when you choose Steersman, at the start of the game, you get hold of the navigation deck. This is a deck of 10 cards that look like this, and you draw a hand of 5 of them. What you then do is you take 4 out of those 5, you can shuffle it around if you want, have a look around, and then you place them in an order of your choice above at the top of the boxes here. There's these 4 little slots, and basically what will happen then is that as you get friendships with factions, whenever you reach 2 influence with a faction, can be any faction you want, you play the next card. So once you get 2 influence of, I don't know, say the Bene Gesserit example, you trigger the first card. You then go to the Fremen, you trigger the second card, for example, and you do that 4 separate times. You can get a lot of effect out of your various abilities. So what does the navigation deck look like? Well, let's go have a sample. These are the 10 cards that are available to you as part of the deck. And again, you'll get drawn any random 5 of them. And there is a lot of stuff definitely going on here with a lot of these cards. And a lot of varying effects as well. Quite a few of them are just generally resource-wise. You know, giving spice, giving water, intrigue, stuff like that. You've got one that gives you like an influence shuffle there, one that's more spy generating. You've got one that's very battle orientated as well. The main one probably worth putting out initially that will probably stick out is there is one card that gives you the chance to get a victory point. 5 spice for a victory point in his own deck. Definitely very good, definitely well worth going for, but it is pricey. 5 spice for a point is not cheap, and of course that spice you're not using for anything else, bear in mind. There's also this couple other really funky ones as well. There's one here that can give you the potential to give you a reveal for the rest of your turns, and then there's another one here as well where you can pay to get influence with a different faction than the one that you just triggered where you've got 2+ influence. So there's definitely some weird stuff going on here. You'll also notice as well that there are a few that have specific requirements. So this one, for example, you can let you pay a water to acquire a spiceless flow. Yes, you can pay a water to get a spiceless flow, and when you acquire it, you get the victory point. You still get that. However, this has got to be put into navigation slot 1. So anywhere else, it's just a straight spice. So it means that you've got to have a water on hand by the time you get 2 friendship with any single faction. There's another one here as well. This one here is got to be in navigation slot 4 here. Also, this one specifically is when you get the 2 influence with the spacing guild as well. So a few of them do have more specific conditions, and so that will definitely very heavily affect if you're going to use them, or if you do, where you're going to put them on your course. Now, it is worth noting that as per the rules, is wherever you reach 2 influence with a faction, and that's it. There is no specifics with this. So it means that, as noted, you can go and get 2 persuasion with any faction of your choice, and that will trigger a card. However, it doesn't say that it has to be a different faction. And so what it means that you can do, if you have a way of doing it, for example, with like a card like this or an agent effect or something like that, is you can get 2 friendship with, say, the Spacing Guild, for example, and then if you had a way of dropping down to 1 and then going back up to 2, that counts as another trigger, and so you can get multiple card triggers from the same faction. It's not often that this happens, admittedly, but it is something that is well worth pointing out as an effect that can happen. And there can be a couple of occasions where that might be advantageous to you, although, of course, you're still going to want to pick up your 4 friendships as you go. But just bear in mind that that is a side effect of this ability. I've had a chance to play around with most of these cards in the few playthroughs I've had with Steersman, and definitely I think there are some of these that are stronger than others. Obviously, anything that gets you a victory point is going to be probably well worth it, so this one could be strong. This one is very, very popular indeed, just going really heavy to Spacing Guild, go deliver supplies twice, and pay a war to get Spice Float is obviously going to have a lot of value here. I've seen this one get picked quite a few times, being able to pick up the reveal, but this has got to be in the 4th slot, which means that this is not normally getting triggered until towards the end of the game. And while Persuasion is definitely nice, I do think that this is probably a little bit overvalued sometimes. And I don't always find that having extra Persuasion makes the biggest difference. It can give it a bit of extra flexibility, but you can also easily just forget that you've got it as well, which can be a bit tricky. There's also some interesting synergies with some of these actual abilities as well. So, for example, one what I quite enjoy is like getting this one here to buy the Spices Flow, and then having my second one be this one here, letting you trash any card. But if you trash a card that costs 1 persuasion or more, you get 2 spice, and of course that does count for the spice. Even though you didn't spend persuasion to get the card, it still has a persuasion cost, so it will let you get the spice mat later on. And so then this can then feed into this one, for example, or whatever else it is that you want to do. So there's definitely some synergies and some obvious kind of lines for you to take with some of these, but some are pretty good as well. Lifting a spy for an intrigue and 2 spice is a pretty good price, truth be told, as well. And even this one here, getting a spice and alliance, just a free intrigue, is not bad. An alliance is something that you're probably going to be fighting for. Again, Steersman is a very faction-heavy fighter. And that leads us into Steersman's other abilities and his passives as such. So, let's go for the bottom one first. Hungry for Spice. Whenever you gain 3 spice or more a single turn, you draw a card. It's not bad. It does mean, yes, Steersman is a very spice-hungry leader normally, and is someone that's going to want to have a lot of generation, so he's going to be wanting to try and get water to hit the likes of Hagar Basin, Pure Basin, Deep Desert. Honestly, though, whenever I've played Steersman, I have an awful habit of forgetting to trigger this. I just do all the darn time. I just forget that I get a load of spice for some reason, and I just draw the card. It's just a thing. It does mean as well for Steersman that there can be some inherent synergy with looking to go for like harvest contracts, for example, and trying to get the harvest contract for 3 or 4 spice and get the card draw, which inherently looks pretty good. But obviously, if you're going that heavy into it, you might find players will try and block you. But the probable elephant of the room has to be Strange Form, and is what is really unique for Steersman here. You start the game with no water. I've seen that before. Princess Yuna in Rise of Ix doesn't have any water either. You also have no Signet Ring. And you may have noticed originally with the plot course how that takes the Signet Ring box. Yeah, Steersman Y'Rkoon has a 9-card deck to start the game, and he has no Signet Ring whatsoever. Bizarre, really. Definitely the only leader I've ever seen without a Signet Ring ability. It's just something we just take for granted, I think, with all the times we've ever played Dune Imperium. Having the ring, having the agent the icon along that goes with it, and the ability to generate resource wherever it is we're doing. And obviously the Signet Ring is a big part of what defines a leader. Well, Steersman doesn't have any. His ring ability effectively is the deck here, which is pretty funky, pretty cool in a way. It kind of fits, obviously, I guess, of what's going on. But yeah, it is something that does kind of catch you out the first couple of times you play Steersman. Not so much having the reduced deck size. That one's not so bad if you play as Staban as well. He has a reduced deck as well because he has no diplomacy. But there are impacts on Steersman having the reduced deck size. And what it means is that, for example, for Steersman, you only have one card in your start deck that lets you get to cities, and that's Recon. Because people, you get used to having, oh, I can go Recon, or I can go Signet Ring. You got no Signet Ring, buddy. So it means that getting to cities early as Steersman is really hard. It means the likes of Y'Rkoon, Spice Refinery, even Siege as well. These are places that you are just not really ever going in the early game. You need to draw cards. You better get to accept contract. You better find a way to espionage early, stuff like that. So that is something that is definitely very jarring at first. And because you don't have much city access, it means that your initial ability to deploy troops into combat early is also limited, just because you just got less access than everyone else, and they're just going to get to these spaces more reliably than you ever will. So it does mean that for Steersman, your early game is going to consist largely of building up faction access, trying to get your first Steers card or two triggered off. Contracts with Accept Contract is definitely pretty good for you if you can find some juicy ones. Yeah, Deliver Supplies like that for Steersman is an insanely great card and really, really fun. And basically, you just kind of early on, you're building yourself up into a more powerful mid to late game. And that's where Steers wants to get through, is he wants to just rocket through, rounds 4, round 5, and really start getting a lot of these abilities off, and just getting a lot of action compression, getting victory points, building up troops if you're going to go fighting, building up persuasion for Spiceman's Flow buying, whatever else that you want to do, fighting for alliances as well, whatever it is that you decide you want to do there. It's about setting yourself up in the beginning game and then pushing on for that later on. So next up, let's look at seat positioning for Steersman. So a pretty natural route that Steers is going to want to do a lot of the time of the game is going Deliver Supplies pretty quickly. Obviously, with no water, you want to go ahead and remedy that, so hitting Deliver Supplies is a good way of dealing with that. And also, given the fact you've got the navigation card that lets you, say, generate the water, so you can pay for and get the Spiceless Flow, means that this is a very obvious target you want to go ahead and do. As such, you want to try to go to places where you feel more reliable that you're going to go ahead and do that. So second seat might be a good example. It's almost like the Baron Harkonnens of old, that with Rise of X just going fold space and stuff like that, so you can go shipping. It's kind of the same sort of principle, but in second seat, like, the odds of first player going to Deliver Supplies is pretty unlikely. So as long as you get your faction accesses in different hands, you can pretty reliably hit there twice. If you think that's a really core part of what you're going to go ahead and do, then you might not feel so comfortable picking later on, especially like seat 4 can be a bit awkward for Steers and feel bad. Admittedly, I do think that it's less likely people go Deliver Supplies, but for each player that is in front of you, it's another opportunity that someone will block you. And if this is that important to you in your game plan, then this obviously can look really, really scary. So only, I think, you'll generally see him get picked a lot on earlier seats just to guarantee that access to Deliver Supplies and go from there. But I do think Openly Steers has probably got decent odds from any old seat. It's also worth bearing in mind as well that because Steers does not have much combat potential early on, it is a bit limited. That even if you somehow pick him in a later seat, people are not going to be that afraid of you going heavily into a combat because it is very expensive Steers without that water, and you're encouraged to go resources mainly early. So that can be another potential advantage of going into an early seat here, maybe even seat 1, because you can spend your first round gathering resources, and then round 2, you're then last to act, and then it's a conflict that you've got position on, and you can make a more accurate assessment of how heavy you want to go to the fight. So, play that as you go here. These seats are probably a little bit easier and straightforward for Steers to play because you've kind of got to premeditate some of your moves. But if you're feeling fancy and funky and going for it later position, then definitely feel free to give it a spin. So it's time for the 5th section, which is the wildcard tips. So Steersman obviously is encouraged to go very spice heavy with Hungry for Spice, but obviously spice generation is going to be difficult because you don't start with that water and you might have other things that you need to be doing with it. So the question is, what are we looking to do in that respect? Bear in mind, it's gain 3 spice or more in a single turn, which means it doesn't have to come exclusively from these spots here. as long as you can generate in any way, shape, or form, you can get that additional card draw. So it means that the likes of, you obviously got like Savfk, for example, while these don't generate spice for you, they can give you extra added benefits for hitting that. So these, if you can get free spice, will let you draw 2 cards in the same round. Now you're talking, it's pretty darn nice. A card like Desert Power as well is a fun one for Steersman. Not so much for generating worms or fighting, but literally just picking it up and just sending it to make a spore spaces, so you're guaranteed to get card draws. And of course, the spice that you generate with Hungry for Spice, you still keep the spice. So you can still do cool stuff with that, like buying text and the like. So there's a lot of potential power there. Other cards worth pointing out as well. Spaces Guild Favor, you can get this discarded with an agent effect for like a Galactic Observer. You can get the spice there as well. Pretty darn nice. Also as well, a card like Southern Fate, for example, letting you get the spice on the reveal can also, again, it's any single turn here, and that includes reveal turns. So if you can reveal for 3 or more spice, you get the additional card draw, and there might be the difference of getting a spiceless flow or not. Other cards worth pointing out here as well. So there's inherently a lot of synergy for Spacing Guild cards. As you mentioned, contracts are usually pretty good for steers. So anything that lets you go ahead and get them and then eventually trash them for victory points are always going to be pretty good for you. And of course, if you can get Chome Demands, that is the absolute dream right there. Steersman's obviously got his own card as well in the game, which is pretty darn good. Just for general use, the Spacing Guild is Alliance that's naturally one you're going to fight for, and that can definitely help. Definitely getting your own card in this game, pretty funny. Smuggler's Haven as well is also another card that's got interesting synergy. Again, you're generating a lot of spice, or trying to generate a lot of spice, so this can be a way for you to either use that spice for victory points, or even if you can get a spy on a Maker Space and get that 2 spice, again on reveal, so you can get that with like Southern Faith, like you can go ahead and draw extra cards, so that can be pretty nice as well. One other synergy that I will throw out as well, Dune Ambassador is one of the few cards in the game that lets you generate spice on action. Not usually a card that you probably associate with Steersman, but Ambassador has an interesting synergy. If you can send it to High Council on a repeat visit, it lets you turn Solari into spice. So that with Ambassador will let you get free spice, which gives you the card draw on top of all the other goodies. And of course, if you're hitting these spots here, you're then able to buy text, for example, and you can do a lot of cool stuff. So like Tron Transports looks really, really fun for the likes of Steersman, and definitely going down that contract game does look pretty darn good. But the last thing I would say as well is trying to not put yourself into too linear a position with your faction mapping. It's something you kind of do a little bit with Tessia Vernius in Rise of X because of the way her snoopers work. There are definitely factions that tend to benefit with hitting at certain times. But again, with Steersman, you're setting up those rewards in the order you desire. But where possible, you don't want to try and force some positions where you want to be hitting certain factions certain times. Obviously, the whole acquire the water here in the first spot is kind of an exception to that. But outside of that, don't kind of put yourself in a position where you feel like you've got to try and hit certain factions at certain points. There is the argument of like setting... trying to get the troop deployment one when you hit the Frem, for example. But if you've got to get that when you hit Bene Gesserit and just garrison up the dudes, you know, that's the way it's got to be. Don't feel like heavily restricted in the way you approach the game by your cards. There's obviously going to be times where the preferences of how things will be a bit more smoother. But if you have to kind of go outside of that, then I don't think that's a huge disaster. So overall, for Steersman, I do think he's a very solid leader and can be a lot of fun. I do think that you want to try and go as heavy as you can into his abilities because, again, he's got some kind of weird funkiness. The fact that he has no Signet Ring is certainly an adjustment you have to make, but only having the 9-card deck means that if whatever cards you buy from the Imperium in the first round, you've always got a chance of picking up to play round 2, and it's always a good feeling to be able to do that and get those actions in immediately and get yourself off those base cards. Do I think Steersman is going to be like an outrageously powerful leader and just dominate Bloodlines, though? Probably not. I think that Bloodlines and Uprising is still largely a combat-heavy game, and it is still an area where Steersman kind of struggles to compete with reliably. You tend to have to like pick like a round 4, round 5, round 6 combat to go heavier Steersman, whatever pairs your combat symbol, and just commit to it to get that point in there. And then you're going to have to try and find some points everywhere. Spice must flows, your Steers deck, intrigues, alliances, that sort of thing. You definitely don't have anywhere near as much kind of reliability in sustaining multiple combats as Steersman, so you're going to have to try and find some other routes to go down. But I do think Steers is definitely pretty solid, and I'd never be that unhappy picking him. But definitely there are a couple of better drawouts of his navigation cards than others, so you've got to have a little bit of luck when you play as Steers. When it lines up, though, it's pretty good. And I've also heard that Steersman is quite the beast in 3v3 mode, but I wouldn't be an expert on that. It's just purely what I've heard. That's going to do it all for us in this one. We've only got a couple of years left to look at in this series. Next up is going to be the lovely Wildcard, which will be a very fun topic. She also approached the game very differently than everyone else, which is super cool. But yeah, if you find these videos useful and enjoyable, then obviously please let us know if you can support the video as well. And the channel, be hugely appreciated. And yeah, like anything, if there are bits and pieces I'm missing out on these videos, these are sort of more cursory guides at times, then feel free to throw those out in the comment section below, and we'd love to see some of the ideas that you guys have got for how to play these leaders. Other than that, though, take care of yourselves, have a good one. We'll see you all very soon.